Welcome to Capture the World with D. Interviews with companies and individuals to learn more about digitally capturing the built world. Video, drone, 3D tours, pictures, panoramas, and more. And now your host, a social influencer and community activist, Dee Johnson.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Capture the World with Dee. I'm your host, Dee Johnson. Today's podcast is sponsored by iGuide, a proprietary camera and software platform for capturing and delivering immersive 3D virtual tours and extensive property data. My guest today is a guru in 3D technology. Together, we'll be discussing what's happened this past year. So, without further ado, please help me welcome the one and only Chris White.
I feel so famous. That was the best intro I've ever heard. Thank you so much for having me again.
Of
I
course.
really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining.
It's great to be here.
Yes. All right. So everybody should be ready for an entertaining podcast because Chris, of course, is always entertaining.
We're going to make it fun. It's going to be fun. There's a lot to talk about.
I know. So what's happened this year, Chris?
Right, so I've compiled a list of the things, some big things that have happened that I think, everyone will already sort of be familiar with, and maybe a couple things that they're not. And then I thought we'd wrap it up by kind of, I'm going to give my suggestions about what I think is going to happen next year. So it's going to be fun. And we're going to start with some data. That's where everybody wants to start, right? Some solid data.
Data
so what I'm going to do is
good.
I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to show.
Hold on a sec. Okay, I have to allow you to do that.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to address is that every year, how can I find it? That's the one. There we go. Every year, the National Association of Realtors puts out a report. So it details data from the previous year. So this year's report, you can see at the top, I imagine, says 2020. So that's normal. That's the 2020 report comes out in 2021. Mm-hmm. So this is part of anyway, the NAR report for this year that they put out. And if you're not familiar with it, the National Association of Realtors creates I'll even show you the cover so you can get some sense of what it is, a profile of home buyers and sellers. So if you are in the real estate industry, you're working with properties that are, being bought and sold, this is really, really interesting stuff. And I would encourage you to get your hands on it. It's a PDF. You might have to pay. I don't know. We might have bought a copy. Either way, it's totally worth it. The reason it's worth it is that it has a lot of information about basically who's doing what and what they want during the transaction. So it's huge. This thing's like bonkers. It's like 100 plus pages, but there's two specific pages that I want to look at to start. You can see, look at all this data. It's so good. We got percentages, we got tables. This is legit. But this is super valuable if you're trying to figure out what it is people are looking for. It's especially valuable if you're running a business and you want to figure out what services you should be providing. That's kind of what I'm going to get at. But the first thing is on page 69. Where's page 69? Where the page count at the top? Yeah, there we go. Hold on. Watch this magic. Okay, so I already had it up. All right. So this is what people essentially want in their online experience. So they've rated things. And then obviously this report organizes them from top to bottom in priority. And this is what people find, valuable or useful when they're searching online. And a lot of searches are online now. I think everybody knows that for reasons, mostly because it makes sense. But if you have a look at this chart, what you'll see is that it tells a story. So let's go through that story now. And that's that what people find most valuable when they're looking at homes are photos.
Yeah.
I don't think that's surprising anyway.
I can't believe that 9% think that photos are somewhat useful. Like, huh?
Yeah. Isn't that weird? But it makes sense. Like a lot of people, I have the luxury, the benefit of working with a lot of people who are on all sides of these transactions all the time. And it's really interesting to hear a lot of different perspectives from, for example, home buyers. And some of them, they they really want the information that is, I would say detailed, but also something that's not necessarily marketing worthy. I'll give you an example so it makes sense. So when I sold my last house, I took photos of the pretty stuff. And then I also took photos of the nasty stuff. So no real estate photographer in their right mind would ever do that, but it's my house. I can do what I want. So that means that when someone wants to see my gross haunted basement, I have photos. Yeah, no problem. Have a look, and that was a specific COVID sort of thing. I wouldn't normally do that, but I knew that people would be buying from out of town and they wouldn't necessarily be able to see. So someone like that doesn't want necessarily the on the rails experience. They want to be able to explore, and they want to see maybe stuff that the agent's not going to show them, and that's fine. So different strokes for different folks, I guess. So anyway, photos, number one, no huge surprise there. The second one, this one always surprised me. It's detailed information about properties. So what does that mean? So it's kind of a vague catch-all for how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms.
I would think that would be more important than the pictures, but okay.
Right. Well, for me, it is. Like, I don't even look at the photos unless I know
exactly.
It has X amount of bedrooms or
exactly.
whatever. Like, so I would rate that higher, but yeah. I mean, sort of, you can see they're very similar, to be honest. They're right at the top. But I know from my own home search that when I'm looking online, I'm looking to see if I'm using that detailed property information, total square footage, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, whatever. And I'm using that to qualify, like I'm using it to search. And then I'm going in and I'm instantly looking photos. So this totally aligns with my experience as well. So I get it. But then the third one straight up is floor plans.
Yeah, that's shocking.
Cool is that? And that always surprises people. They're just like, wait, really? People rate floor plans higher than video? And the answer is yeah, they do.
I could see that. I can totally see that.
I'm biased, obviously, because I really like floor plans. So that aligns again with my experience, but I don't know. I think it's a surprise to most people to find out that other people like floor plans. I don't know. It's like a secret thing that we all kind of hide, you like floor plans. Cool. Me too. The floor plans make sense though, because if you think about it, this is how I do it anyway. So I think this makes sense. I'll explain it. People want to see if the home meets their needs in terms of size. Cool. Then you want to look at photos to see if it's nice, but then there's something missing, right? It's like, you want to get a sense of like, how does it work? How are things connected? And I find that there's a few different ways to get to that. It's not just floor plans, but floor plans are a very, pardon the expression, black and white way of looking at the way a home flows. And it's a really great way to understand, how things work. So if I'm going to buy a home based on a bunch of factors, a lot of them have a lot to do with, sort of the size, look, and layout. And the layout I can easily get from a floor plan. Not everybody can, and that's okay, because you've got the, next two on the list. Agent contact information makes sense, because you need to contact people to make an offer. So that's fair, especially if you have additional questions that aren't answered in the listing. So I don't think we need to go into great detail there, but virtual tours, it really is providing the same function. It's giving you that option to like go in there and kind of understand the property and sort of get a feel for, like, is this room next to this one? Are my kids going to be loud and they're going to wake up the baby or whatever? I want to spread my kids out as much as possible. So if one's being loud, they don't wake up the other ones, or is my bedroom going to be far enough away from there so that I won't hear them, type of thing? I don't know. The top, sort of 5 or 6 make perfect sense to me. But the surprise one, so I'll just go through a few more. So detailed information about recently sold properties, that makes sense, obviously, because people want to know if, what the value of the property should be exactly. And we're like addicted to that. We look at it all the time using whatever that software is. I forget the name of it. Neighborhood information, I mean, that's huge. That makes a lot of sense. It's funny though, how far down videos are. Like, doesn't that blow your mind? So many people are into video, but people don't really rate it that highly. I think video has a huge place because it has so much visual appeal and it's so interesting and engaging. But I think, that's not necessarily what people are doing when they're qualifying themselves for homes. And I think this chart shows that.
Well, I think if I'm looking at a house, I don't want to look at a video because it takes too long.
It can see. Well, I do a lot of comparison. I don't know if you do that, but I don't want to watch a video. And I'm opening up other houses. Like I'm trying to figure out what's a good
Yeah.
deal, you know?
Yeah. If I'm looking at a house preliminarily, I give it half a minute each house. And then I pick the ones I'm interested in, and then you go back. But so, yeah, I that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. So anyway, this is probably, in my opinion here, the most valuable chart in the whole report. We'll move on because we're going to run out of time if we just talk about this for an hour, but it's very interesting. So you can see the results obviously from 2020, but you can see them from, 2019, 2018. They do this report every year. So we're going to go to one other page 166. And so you can start to see the difference. So this isn't going to be a huge surprise, I don't think, to anyone, but things have changed over the last few years. There's a lot more people shopping online for reasons. So they've pretty clearly kind of identified that, home sellers before and during COVID, like kind of what's occurred. And you can see the jump, for example, in virtual tours is massive.
Yep.
And
which is what you would expect. I think the key is once we get past COVID, will that stay or will it go back to what it was?
I'm going to save that for my predictions for the end because I have a theory. Okay. And I think I'm going to be right. Okay. I'm mostly sure I'm going to be 50% right. Is that confident? That's confidence right there. All right, cool. So anyway, this report, really interesting. You can see some things are improved. People are more interested in some things and they're losing interest in others. And none of it's a huge surprise. But the story here is that, people are shopping online. They're looking for very specific things. And in terms of what's happened this year, obviously there's a big boost in people looking for information online, of course, right? Okay, cool. Now moving on. I'm going to do a new share now. I'm going to go to my browser. And I'm going to show you guys another report. So Zillow, actually I'll stop it first and then I'll go back. So Zillow does their own report. They do a whole series of reports. Zillow does a lot of research and they publish it, online, and you can go look at it. So I have the link for this one. There we go. Let me share that. Bear with me while I figure out what I'm doing. I think this is the one probably. Okay. So can you see my screen? It says importance of virtual home tour rises.
No, I see your notes.
Okay. Hold on. Wrong one. We were so close. This is multiple monitor setups. Oh, here we go. I got it. Is that the one?
There we go. Yeah.
There we go. I'm a professional. We got this. So the story. So this is the buyer's consumer housing trends report from Zillow. Here, let me go to the top and I'll show you. There you go. Results of the Zillow Consumer Housing Trends Report 2021. So this is for this year. And if we go back down here, this is telling the same story for this year. Again, not a surprise, but virtual tours are more popular, as are floor plans. Big shock, right? Yeah. But it's kind of neat to see that it's a fairly significant jump, in percentages from, let's see if I can find it. Here we go. From 2019 to 2021, you've got somewhere in the range of 10 or 15% difference. I mean, that's a significant chunk of people who are kind of saying, yeah, I want this detailed information. And that's good for all of us in this industry, because that means that, our virtual tours we get more market share. There's more work for everybody in terms of floor plan creation and creating 3D virtual tours and real estate photography in general. So that's pretty cool. There's lots of other stuff in this report. I won't go through it, but that was the interesting one that I thought was kind of cool, that 3D tours are kind of taking off. Yep. Just to strengthen that NAR report. Okay, now our data's out of the way. Now we can talk about the fun stuff. So the next thing on my list, it's a big one. Matterport went public this year. So I have some theories.
Okay, what's your theory?
So just in case people don't know what I'm talking about, I assume that you do, but when you assume, right? So Matterport, so I don't know how stocks work, to be honest with you, but the way it works, as my understanding, is that they kind of partnered with another company and they did some wizardry, and then they were able to go public through that partnership. And so it's not just as simple as going public. It's a little more complicated, but
yeah, the mechanism for going public has changed, right?
Yeah, I've heard that this new way is very popular. I don't really understand it, but cool. So then the whole point of doing that is to get some money flowing and do something with it, either cash out or reinvest it or whatever. So I have my theories as to why they did this.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell them to you, and hopefully they're not crazy.
Okay.
Well, I watched an interview with the CEO, Matterport, and I read some articles, and it seemed pretty clear, but I didn't really fully grasp it until I kind of watched a few things and thought about it. So I'll share. Okay, so there is, and I know this from my own experience too, there is a certain percentage of properties that are that have been photographed, we'll say, or turned into a 3D tour or whatever, and that percentage is steadily rising, for sure. Slowly, bit by bit. COVID certainly, pushed that forward, absolutely. I don't think that, I don't want to ruin it for them, but I don't think that trend's going to get reversed at all. But I think from the perspective of a company that digitizes properties, I think the potential, it is, and it looks enormous. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So many properties across the planet. I mean, there's no limit. It's not like they're geographically limited, except for the obvious constraints like language and, physically getting hardware there, software, whatever. But I can see why it would make sense to generate some cash and then really put that aggressively into growth, because the potential looks huge. I don't know if that strategy will pay off for them, but I don't see why it wouldn't. There's certainly a need for something that digitally captures a space so that people can see it remotely in a whole bunch of different areas. It's a good segue into the next thing I'm going to talk about. Basically, that's my theory, is that they went public because they wanted to generate some money, because they really want to capitalize on their position as a market leader and their first mover advantage to just start, it's not gobbling up because they're capturing, but I guess it is, like, just digitizing as many things as possible and getting into as many markets as possible, and becoming really aggressive about that growth. That's my theory. This is crazy.
All right, you want to hear my theory?
Yeah, okay, go for it.
I think they brought RJ in as the new CEO. You know how different CEOs have different talents? So I think he was brought in specifically to make the company go public. I think there was always this big push, but it increased as other small companies are now popping up that are doing virtual tours. There's a lot more. It's not in the infancy stage anymore. And so you have to go public now to get most bang for your buck, just in case you get pushed out later on down the road. Matterport does have a name for itself and is a market leader currently, but in this technology world, it's tough. It's dog eat dog, and if you don't produce and create, you can get kicked to the curb and trampled on as everybody else passes you. So it's tough, right? So it's smart to go public now, but we'll see. I mean, it seems like they're capitalizing on the momentum that they've gained over the last couple of years with COVID, has really pushed the whole virtual thing. And they're just like, well, hey, let's do it now, Yes.
I haven't looked at any of their growth stats. Like, I vaguely get the basic premise here, which is now, they're public and they have to answer to shareholders, and it's a whole thing. So they have to put out like financial reports and all that stuff. And I don't know if they're any good, but
so recently I saw some numbers that was kind of disappointing. They don't have that many paid customers. I mean, they have a lot of customers, and then like a small percentage of that was paid. It was shocking to me. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think the Matterport technology is really good, and it was really good in its time. But the question is, with new hardware, new players in the game, what's the future? Hard to say, right?
It's true. I'm going to check my notes and see if I made speculation about this at the end. I think I did.
I think if they changed their company culture, I think that would really help them.
Oh, I didn't hear. I'll talk about it now. I didn't put it on there. Okay. So my theory is, Matterport has lost a bit of their sizzle, I think.
Yes.
Which is kind of like a good thing. Like, if you've got a lot of brand recognition and people really see your product and see it as kind of like a normal thing, that's not a bad thing. You work really hard to get there. But a big part of what makes it like this stuff, interesting and I wouldn't say viral, but kind of catchy and people talk about it, is that it's weird and cool. And I think they've kind of lost that a little bit. Maybe in North America, other markets, I haven't got a clue, but like, I don't hear people talking about how interesting and cool Matterport is anymore.
Yeah. I
Like
read
it's
an article recently that basically said, if you have Matterport, don't use that name in your sales and marketing, just sell the concept, right?
Yeah,
Because
that
their
makes
point
sense.
was not many people know the name anymore. So, I mean,
It's
the 3D world is growing. There's new hardware, there's new software, there's new companies all over the place, right? The Chinese are getting into this. The Europeans have been doing this for a while. So it's an interesting business to be in.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but I think there's more growth to be had. But I'll talk about it at the end.
Okay. All right. Moving on.
Okay, moving on. QB Casa got acquired.
So my old stomping ground.
Yeah, I don't put it in my notes. Who bought them?
Oh, I don't remember the name of the company, but the company bought them specifically to do appraisals, right?
It really makes sense in terms of acquisition. Creating floor plans, however you do it, is difficult, and it's not
Yes.
like fully AI powered yet. That's
Yes,
a load of
that is
course,
correct.
So so it really does make a sense. It makes a lot of sense for another company that struggles there to want to acquire. So yeah,
Yeah. So shocking to me was that it was acquired for appraisals, which require accuracy, and Cubicasa's floor plans are wildly inaccurate. So that was like, kind of.
yeah. It's an interesting situation.
So all I could say was, I hope they did their due diligence.
Well, that segues really well into the other note I have here, which is that they embraced gross interior area calculations.
Which was shocking too, because
Well, when we would compare our products, iGuide versus their floor plans, it was always like, well, yeah, you can get their floor plans, but they don't have this. Like they have a big disclaimer that's like, this isn't a real floor plan. Don't actually use these measurements type thing on it.
well, but a lot of people just want to know the flow of the home, and it's perfect for that, right?
Yep.
But if I'm going to use it and depend on measurements, you're opening yourself up to a lot of like legal issues at that point, right?
So I'm going to flex a little and explain what that is for anyone who's listening who has no idea what we're talking about, because there might be a few people. So hold on, let me get ready to flex. There we go. So gross interior area, gross floor area, interior area, whatever you want to call it, is an area calculation on a property. So the reason I know a lot about this is that I work for iGuide, and obviously iGuide is very measurement focused, and we're all about this stuff. So the reason that total square footage is important is that when a property is listed, it has to be given a value. And part of that value is obviously like, location and features, but the size is a big thing. So there are dollars and cents attached to, that total square footage, whether it's in real estate or appraisals or insurance, restoration, construction, it doesn't matter. There's always kind of like a dollar amount attached to it. So it's really, really important that it be accurate and drawn to standards that are very easily communicated. So one of those sort of standard things to communicate in terms of square footage size is the area calculation and what it includes. And I went through their little, what do you call it, help thing on Cubicasa, and I looked at what they're including. It makes sense, but basically it's a set of rules. So it's an area calculation, kind of length times width, you got area, but then it's also like, but we're not including the balcony, and we're not including the this and that. So what's included in addition to, well, exactly. So there's different types of calculations that iGuide we use. Exterior area, which is everything, the whole footprint of the house. Yeah. And then we also do interior area. So interior area is like everything that you can, it's not exactly walk on, but more or less, not including the exterior walls. So that means that the perimeter of the house starts at the inside, like the paint of the wall. And that lines up with a few different standards. There's ANSI and RMS and a few others. I think Cubicasa was calling it gross living area. I can't remember. They had two different terms. I just read it this morning. I've already forgotten. But that's a good segue into the fact that there are no standardized terms for this stuff, technically speaking. There's no like one measurement standard that everybody uses. There's quite a few. But it makes sense. You can tell me if I'm wrong on this, that if they're in a space that really wants accuracy, wherever, appraisals, real estate, doesn't matter, that they would then take steps to standardize some of their measurements. So it makes sense that they would adopt that. I mean, we've been just at iGuide, like been dealing with that for years and years. Like how we report the square footage is a constant source of discussion. It never goes away. And it's I can see from customer feedback that they probably have had to deal with this for years. You might even be familiar with this. Like, I'll give you an example. So I'm at a house and I'm shooting it and I'm in the basement, and the agent comes over and he brings over the builder's plans. He puts them down on the table and he's like, "Yeah, I know you're measuring the house, but I need your numbers to match these numbers." And I was like, "Well, no, that's not how it works. I'm measuring it and then I get numbers and then you kind of compare the numbers." And then he's like, "No, they got to look like this, or I'm never hiring you again." And I was like, "I guess I'm never working with you." It's fine. Okay. And once you get into that square footage game, it's a slippery slope.
Well, houses cost a lot of money. So
there have been disputes over 20 square feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in a condo where it's like 500 in total and you're paying $1 million or something ridiculous because it's downtown, whatever.
My understanding is in New York City, you buy property based on square footage. So I've had people argue with me about the windowsill. Did you include that? It's like, wow. I mean, every inch counts. So it's super important, right? We're talking about a lot of money at stake. So
yeah, it makes sense because I mean, during that transaction or during any process where there's, kind of money, people get a little bit upset sometimes, and you can circle back after and with a clear head, look at all the data and try to find flaws in it. And people do that. It's not buyer's remorse exactly, but it's kind of like that, or maybe it is straight up.
So I think that iGuide with the laser measurements is much more accurate. So if square footage and measurements matters, I would not use Cubicasa. Matterport's a little bit better, but not as good as iGuide. So I would probably go with Matterport first. But yeah.
Accuracy means different things to different people. So if you really care, it's technically speaking, if you have floor plans, you should always investigate them. So regardless of who you get them from. And investigating means you figure out what standards they used to draw them, and you figure out what's included and excluded. Are there totals in this? You have to basically investigate before you use your floor plan. So any floor plans can be good if they're drawn correctly, and they're verified as well.
The whole floor plan game is in its infancy. Nobody's completely automated it yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's a lot of smaller companies that are cropping up that are doing them just based off of 360 panos. So it's an interesting game. And we'll see where it goes.
It's true. It's definitely going to grow in the future. I don't want to spoil it, but that's the thing I'm going to mention later. Okay, next thing. Matterport launches their scanning services.
Yes. So they had tried to do that before, and they started it by doing a test in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and I think they launched it on a Friday, and by Sunday they pulled it back. It was not well received by the community. Basically, Matterport is saying, we're going to go into the scanning services, so we're going to compete with everybody we sold a camera to, which is crazy.
It's a little cringy, but I can see why they did it. I spend a lot of time in marketing trying to think from other people's perspectives. So I'm like, why would they do that? And I instantly was like, oh, I know why they did that. So I'll just tell you what I think.
Okay, why did they do that?
All right. So when you have a broad range of people using your technology, there can be a very inconsistent experience. Some people are good at it, some people aren't. So that can hurt your brand. So trying to get some consistency in the capture process sort of makes sense. You know what I mean? And what I know from working at iGuide for years is that not everyone is a marketer. People can be really brilliant at taking photos or doing something related to the process, but sometimes they cannot get off the ground in terms of marketing that product. And they're just not really good businessmen. They're not good business people, sorry. They're maybe not good promoters. Who knows? There's all sorts of weird reasons, but and that happens a lot, just one of those things. Some people really with the best of intentions invest in a product and then they don't really get up and running. So it does kind of make sense to create a sort of Uber-esque system where you contract out jobs to people who just really can't market for themselves. They're not going to get the same level of service that they would at if they went with like a professional real estate photography company. So as a company, you might think, well, okay, we're kind of competing with them, but not really. They won't mind, but they do mind. Spoiler. But I can see it from their perspective in the sense that they want to sell things to people. But in order to sell them things, they have to get the capture process done first. So you have this problem where, you have inconsistent pricing and you have people basically reselling. But Matterport doesn't want that. This is my theory again. What they want is they want to get your data so that then they can sell you stuff, like as a consumer, like or as a bigger business or whatever. So what I mean by that is the capture services. So I call them up because it's like a standard service. I feel safe. I don't have to work very hard as a consumer to like figure out who to hire. Matterport will take care of it. They're a big name. And if I complain, I can just go to them and then they'll fix it or whatever. And that's a lot. That's a big box store kind of mentality, right? People don't want to go to small businesses because they're, I don't know, afraid or something. But anyway, you hire a capture services person. They come, they shoot your property, and then they send it to your account. So they don't keep it and maintain it for you. They send it to you. And now Matterport is free to sell you all of their products. You want to buy floor plans? Do you want to buy, you know what I mean? So they're directly selling you those things instead of selling them through that middleman of a photography business. And that makes sense. Like as a marketer myself, I'm like, I get it. Like all of a sudden I've got all these customers. They're just, they're there and I could just try to sell them things whenever I want. That's fantastic. And it costs me nothing. Like the MatterPack data, exists. It's there. I can just keep trying to sell it to them every like 6 months or so until they tell me to stop. So basically there's like a software or a services product stack. There you go. Sorry. So they've got a series of products. So you get someone in on the entry level, and their whole website is set up this way. Most people's are, to get them in to buy a thing. And then you want to keep selling them things with doing as little work as possible. So from that perspective, makes perfect sense. Does that make people angry because they are then cut out? Oh yeah. Like, of course it does.
So I would disagree a little bit. So
that's fair.
My attitude is, if you're in the business of selling a camera and some software and a system, don't go into direct competition with the people that you're selling to, because that's...
Oh no, I agree with you. That's
bad business. Okay, so I think that Matterport is doing this because they're getting these large enterprise customers who have lots of property, and they're going out and they're greedy. So they could just say, hey, people that I've sold a camera to, here's some people that are they could connect those two people together, right? The person who wants the service and the person who they sold the camera to. But they're like, no. We'll do this. We'll farm it out to people at a really low and pay them very little, and we'll make money off of this. So this is completely a money-making operation.
I didn't even think of that. That's a good point. But what you mentioned about the sort of logistics, like they even mentioned on their website, you've got photographers all over, say, North America or the world, I don't know, that use Matterport. And so they can take a client who has needs in like multiple locations and basically meet those needs. I mean, that makes sense.
But the guys, I guess, and the people that they're getting to do the scanning are not necessarily the greatest scanners. I've seen some horrible scans. So they're not even vetting the people, right? So you can say, well, we're going to get the best people. That's I don't think that's reality. I think it's just it's another way of revenue.
I believe that for sure. Oh, it's all about the money, right?
Yeah. So
I could see though that any sort like Uber or something where you're just starting out and you're kind of working with people and you're giving people like gigs or whatever. Yeah, there's some growing pains. I can see why it wasn't a seamless launch. That makes perfect sense. Okay, moving on. This is a good segue too. Increase in 3D tours, virtual tour, and activity in insurance, restoration, construction, commercial, everything retail, that's not residential real estate.
So 3D is now branching out because, there are a lot of homes, but there's also a lot of buildings that aren't homes.
Yep.
Right. And if you want to upload pictures to, say, Google Maps, it can't be a residence. So just that in and of itself, if I own some kind of restaurant, store, whatever, it's good advertising for me to do a virtual tour and you can stick it on Google Maps, you can advertise. So yeah, definitely.
For years, people have been, dabbling, iGuide included, residential real estate is a very, consistent, predictable thing because properties come up all the time. And, the technology for creating 3D tours or virtual tours or whatever, it works there. It makes sense, but I can see everyone moving into different spaces. Matterport's fascinating because I can see them backing off residential real estate and attacking everything else. Like they're going nuts right now with like facility management, property management, that kind of stuff. And it does make sense from that perspective to remotely capture a large facility. And then the ability to go in, Matterport's not the only one who can do this. iGuide can obviously do it too. And so can lots of other virtual tour platforms. But the ability to send that data to someone as a cost savings and say like, look, you don't even need to go to the site anymore. You can just go to the data, find the pipe that needs to be fixed, tag it, and then tell your contractor to go there and then send him the tour. Like that is actually pretty cool. It makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the technology is starting to get some like traction in those spaces.
Yes.
We've seen it at iGuide in the insurance and restoration industry for sure, 100%. In terms of facility management as well. Yep. I would say that definitely that's going to be like a huge trend for next year.
So with residential real estate, it's more private. Like that's somebody's home, right?
Yeah.
And you can use pictures and virtual tours to sell it and to buy it. But after that, it's like, do you really want that floating around out on the internet? Whereas public places, like I want to see a cathedral that's famous in France, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of baggage that goes with residential real estate as well that other industries just don't have. And I know from being a real estate photographer, sometimes the grass is greener. So I can see why companies and individuals would really be looking to kind of branch out into commercial real estate or whatever. Because it's real estate. There's deadlines. It's people can be really demanding. There's a lot of pressure on everybody. Like and then obviously it's seasonal. So January, you're sitting on your hands. You've got nothing to do because there's no one selling houses. So it does make sense that companies would want to do that. So yeah, totally reasonable. Also, and just this is another opinion I think, but I've anecdotally seen this. A lot of features that really work well for things like retail are becoming like more available. This technology, like any virtual tour or 3D tour, they're not in their infancy anymore. They've been around a while, right? So things that work for retail, like linking within the tour and like tags and stuff, like all that's there. It all works now.
Or being able to purchase directly from your virtual tour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah. And that leads us to our next topic. How are we doing for time? We're doing okay. I can finish this stuff. So there's lots of new players. I think that's an interesting and reasonable side effect of COVID pushing everyone, into virtual tours, is that a lot of people would say, hey, I want to get into that game.
I think a lot of these companies existed before the COVID hit. There's just
some of them have been around forever. Looking at my list here, and you just kind of forget. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot they existed. Well, they're not that old. I mean, MetaReal, yes. I'd never heard of Treatise. I had to look them up.
So Treatise is like a layer on top of Matterport. They're based in Israel.
Is that what it is? Okay, cool.
A great group of people, just terrific, hardworking. They've come a long way. So a great company to work with. SeekBeak with Tim and Jen has just grown with its feature set.
I really like their website. It was very creative.
And those two are just darling. I mean,
sometimes with 360 experiences, which is kind of what the vibe I got from the website, is that it's really about like the content in the tour, not necessarily the tour itself. And I felt like they kind of get that.
Do.
I could be completely wrong.
No, they absolutely do. And
I was like, oh, that's nice.
Like I saw a store that they did, and it was amazing. You can just buy stuff from right in the tour. I mean, if I was going to set up a store, I'd do that. Okay. We have MetaReal from Canada, Studio from Canada, some from Europe. So Giraffe 360, 3D Vista. I think 3D Vista is pretty popular. Again, a couple that created that. They're cute.
Giraffe 360 has an adorable logo. I just had to say that. very cute. Their camera's also adorable. Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like
It looks
it's
like a
attractive.
giraffe, right?
It's very cute. I don't know if it looks anything like a giraffe. It looks a bit like a thing with the thing. I don't know. But it's cool. But yeah, anyway, I guess long story short, there's a lot of new people on
There
the scene,
is.
which makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of money to be had there. One thing that we noticed, or actually here from my experience, we'll say it like this. In let's say 2015, the percentage of I'll use real estate because that's what I'm familiar with, but the percentage of the real estate market doing virtual tours was like 2%. It was so low. And everyone is fighting over that 2%, and it's like, it's just not a lot of room there. But now we're into like 20, 30, 40 and higher percentage. So there is room for like more people to come in and innovate. And that's my main takeaway from sort of looking at like a lot of the different technologies that are coming out. They've all got their thing, and it's very cool. Like, I love to see the industry get pushed because certain people are innovating in certain ways and like doing different stuff and trying out different features. Like Matterport's got their thing. They're doing their thing. They're not going to be doing anything really weird and experimental and innovative anytime soon, I don't think. Not if they're publicly traded anyway. iGuide, I mean, we've got our thing. It is what it is. It's very reliable and accurate. But it's neat to see people be creative and just do kind of cool stuff.
Yeah, a lot of these small companies, they innovate, but they do it quickly, and they're able to push out a lot of new features in a short time frame. So
it's true. It's so true. They have a passion for what they're doing.
They
so
do.
They're really,
And
they
there's
don't have as much red tape and more agile.
Some really smart people out there, some smart ideas. I know there's some people in Korea that are doing stuff. So yeah, I think that it's just going to get more exciting, and it's going to become more crowded, and we'll see who comes out on top.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, next thing. PFRE conference just happened. So I didn't go myself, and I know you didn't go either.
Right.
So I guess we're just both sad, but that's okay. It probably wasn't that great anyway, right? That's what I say.
So
that's what I
it's
say to
only
the sales
the
team.
second one in person, right?
Correct. Yeah, last year's would have been just
Virtual.
Virtual
And
or
then we
online.
both went to the first one.
Yep, and it was really fun. They clearly learned from the first one, and they tweaked it, and they made it better. So in case people don't know, I'll explain. So the PFRE conference is the Photography for Real Estate Conference and Expo. Happens in Las Vegas, roundabout Black Friday. I believe it's November 18th, 19th, or 17th, 18th, something like that. Annually, it's going to happen every year, I think, because the first 3 years have been a great success. So I suspect it will happen next year unless there's an issue. And even if there is, they did last year's online for COVID reasons. So it's really great. There's a lot of great speakers. They're really focused on real estate, architectural photography. A lot of great people. I didn't get to go, so I asked our sales team like what happened. And I was like, hey, give me a report. And so they made notes for me. So I'm going to tell you what they are. So apparently they had lots of good conversations. And I do remember talking with Brandon, who runs the show, and he said that was like a priority for them. They wanted to make it so that people could kind of have more conversations. Like, oh, cool. That's awesome.
That's good.
There were a lot of iGuide providers there. It's not a shameless plug, it's just true. There's a lot of iGuide people who go to the show. It's a little plug, but that's really cool because it's like, for the sales team, that's why they care, is that they get to talk to people that they've maybe sold cameras to in the past. And we're all about building relationships with people. And that really made sense at the show because a lot of people who are returning are maybe 2 years ago, they were starting out, and now they're trying to grow. And so that's kind of neat to see their journey in that business building. And they're doing great. Pat on the back. They want to, take iGuide and move forward with that. And they're branching into video and drone and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of cool to be kind of along with them on that journey as they grow their business. So that's neat. We gave away a camera.
I should have gone.
Free Planix camera. Yeah, apparently the guy who won it was like at the buffet or something. they had to go chase him down. I thought that was funny. Apparently, this is another thing. This will come back to what we can talk about at the very end. We still have time? Yeah, we got lots of time. Our per project pricing was very popular. So iGuide has always had this, but we've struggled. So I'm sure and everyone probably knows that subscriptions are like the new normal.
Yeah.
So iGuide doesn't do subscriptions, and just as a comparison, it's like a new thing we call it now, per project pricing. It's hard to say. It's okay. And apparently that was like a hit, And we've always said we have no subscription fees, but apparently saying no subscription fees isn't as good as per project pricing.
So that's the difference between a la carte at a restaurant and the buffet.
Exactly. You got it. That's exactly right. Sometimes you just want to order the sushi boat. You don't want to have to keep ordering all the dragon rolls one after the next, And then a lot of people, so we, in terms of technology, the Theta Z1 is still kind of king of the hill. And a lot of people were kind of excited because I've got one over here somewhere, and it's actually pretty great. I've had the QCam 8K. I've had the Insta360 One X somewhere. Actually, I love that camera. It was pretty good for videos. It was just absolutely fun to play with. We had a Theta V, I think maybe at one point. I don't know. But yeah, the Z1 is pretty solid.
I'm sorry,
solid
it's a Z1.
Sorry, you're right. Z1.
No, it's a great camera. If you're thinking about
know I'm Canadian.
buying a Ricoh Theta, buy the Z1.
Yeah, it's fantastic. There was a point where you couldn't buy one because they were all out of stock because of
high demand.
Reasons.
It's a great camera.
Exactly. It's a knockout. But people were really excited that our technology involved the Z1 because they have one, and then we allow you to buy the base unit with the LiDAR and you can touch it. And then my last note is that everybody liked Gordon's jeans. Gordon's one of our sales guys. Apparently, he was wearing very nice jeans. They thought they'd be nice to put that in your phone. Thanks, guys.
That's nice. I'm happy that you have nice jeans, Gordon.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull that out of the video and send it to him. He'll appreciate it. But yeah, it was, and the show apparently went really well. No issues. It was really nice, and everybody was really happy. And I'm guessing here, I think people have been stuck in their houses for a long time. They were really excited to get out and talk to people. Just a guess. I don't know.
Well, conferences are coming back in person, right? Next year?
Oh my, next year is nuts. We've got so many trade shows lined up. It's bonkers. Just in the first half of the year, I think there's 6 or 7. We're scrambling. It's so funny because as a marketer, you there's certain trade show things you just take for granted, like little stands and booths and all the things that go to trade shows, business cards, brochures, all that stuff. And we've just had a couple of years off. We haven't had to make any of that stuff. So now we're scrambling. I guess we need to order some stuff. So I don't know if that's like that across.
So will you be going to some of the trade shows?
Oh yeah, we'll be attending every trade show. The only one that I know for sure that we're not exhibiting at right now is Inman. We'll be in Inman Connects in January. So someone from iGuide will be there, but we're not going to exhibit probably. But NARS, there's some sort of trade shows that are about building. We have one coming up called the Building Show in Toronto. That's I think December 1st, I want to say. So we'll be at that, and that kind of stuff. Okay. So the last part. Yes. So I have a bunch of predictions. So I'll say them, and then you can tell me if I'm completely nuts or not. Okay. Here's prediction number 1. Okay. I've made some bad predictions in the past, I'll be honest. My prediction is that prices are going to rise. So if you were a real estate photographer, you better get used or familiar with the concept of raising your personal prices. So what I mean by that is that everything is kind of inching up, like gas, just regular stuff.
Oh, right? Inflation high.
So what that means is as a business, well, yeah, exactly. Inflation and then just low supply, high demand, whatever. Yeah. So supply chains. So just have to say supply chains. It just covers everything. So there's a really awkward conversation that has to take place between you and your clients when you need to raise your prices. So my hot take on next year is you better write that email now and get used to the thought of sending it, because you're going to send it at some point. If you're driving around in an SUV and gas is twice as expensive, you're not going to be making very much money.
And you're going to get pushback too. So be ready for that.
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, if you're running a business and you want to raise your prices, you send a communication of some sort to your clients and you say, hey, this is a thing that we're doing. And if you can, you kind of do it every year.
Yep. You do it on a regular
that way
cadence.
It's less painful.
Yes.
Exactly. But a lot of people don't do that. They kind of procrastinate it. And I think you're going to be forced to do it, I think, next year, because I think prices are going to be a little bit awful. Just awful enough. Not crazy. But
I think it's a good idea to have a price increase, a gradual price increase on a regular cadence, rather than not doing it and then one day saying, oh, I got to raise it, but it's going to be a lot. Because that's a lot harder.
Pull it off like a Band-Aid. We're going up 50%, But that's always the fear, right? If I raise my prices too much, I'm going to lose clients, and I don't want to do that. So sometimes it's easier just to kind of go, oh, I'll do it next year, and then not worry about it. That's prediction number 1. Prediction number 2 is, and we already kind of talked about it, competition in the sort of 3D tour, virtual tour, floor plan space is going to spawn cool stuff.
Yep.
People are going to try to differentiate themselves. We're gonna get some weird stuff. iGuide's working on some cool stuff. There you go. See, I linked there. So I'll give you some examples like integrated social sharing, lead capture, customizable like just kind of things that people are kind of asking for, but they're kind of interesting and cool, and like have a good story behind them.
Yeah.
I mean, lead gen doesn't need a story. That's just good all around.
So recently we've seen a lot more virtual staging.
Yes, there you go. Yep.
A lot more automation, a lot more artificial intelligence, like creating guided tours. We've seen a lot more drone footage integration. So what's next?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really cool. I think people are going to go wild, and it's going to be some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So the next one, we already talked about it. Subscriptions are now like normal. It's just normal. That's just
I
how
think
things are going to go.
it's not just in the 3D capture industry. I think.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, just everybody.
Like
the subscriptions,
like TV stuff, right? And yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's, I mean, I don't know. I kind of thought what people would do in terms of bigger companies, they would have both models. They would kind of get you. They're like, you can do a subscription, or you can kind of do an a la carte, to use your term, kind of thing over here. But there's benefits to either one. But no, it looks like people are just like, nah, we're doing subscriptions.
Well, if I was a company, I would prefer subscriptions because it's revenue that's somewhat guaranteed. Yeah. So.
Makes sense. I'm not surprised. I just kind of maybe thought it would last a little longer. Oh well, what are you gonna do? And then my guts tell me that in the next year we're gonna see a trend toward accurate measurements and floor plans continue to build and grow at a steady pace, and that's really not a big surprise because that's been the case year over year, every year. Measurement standards are starting to come into place. There's parts of Canada, there's South Carolina, I think, and there's other places where measurement's important and people are starting to look for those standards.
Yes.
And that makes sense because so many more people are online now and they're seeing conflicting information and they're like, well, which is the right one?
Yeah.
So it really kind of asks, begs the question, like, isn't there someone overseeing this,
Yeah, interesting.
So there's a lot of different measurement standards. And I think what will happen is that there will be some winners. There's ANSI, there's BOMA. It's a bunch of different acronyms for things I don't understand. But basically, one of them is going to probably win out, or some kind of hybrid. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was something ANSI, or it's another one, IPMS or something. But yeah, I think that's going to be a trend that we're going to see just keep going. And that's going to really stress the floor plan creating industry and it's going to make it better, basically. It'll be a little bit less Wild West and a little bit more
I think
accurate.
Automating more of it. I know that there's universities right now that are working on that. So we'll see what comes out of that.
Hey, you ready for my last prediction? It's not that exciting. It's super obvious. So because I'm in Canada, things are a little different. In the United States, people are, this is what I'm hearing anyway from people, is that they're backing off a little bit from, virtual tours and COVID related things, which makes total sense, right? You're going to correct and then overcorrect or whatever. So everyone had to stay home, and then you don't have to, it's party time. Let's all go out and do stuff. So I think what's going to happen though, and I think we'll see this in Canada a bit sooner, just because I don't think we're going to overcorrect as much because it's winter and we're all freezing to death. But it's just very cold here. It slows things down. But I think what we'll see is the growth will slow in terms of virtual tours, and then it will just keep growing again. You know what I mean? Like, I think people are going to back off and say, "Oh, now it's cool, COVID's over," and then they're going to be like, "Yeah, but virtual tours are actually super useful, and people do actually want them, and they provide a lot of value. So let's keep making them." So I think that virtual tour as part of a business is still a really good investment.
Yeah. So
I don't think it's like sell your Z1 and like go get a drone. Although, I mean, you can do that. Drones are awesome. But, I think that there's still a role for virtual tours next year, even if the growth isn't as crazy as it has.
Yes. So I think as we come out of COVID, and I think personally I'm seeing less restrictions and people returning more to normal. And with the conferences coming out in person next year, that tells you something. Cruise lines starting up again.
Oh yeah, I forgot about cruise lines. Didn't they scrap all the boats and turn them into shipping crates or something?
So with the pandemic's kind of starting to go away, I think that people will revert back to, I just want to go see the property.
Yeah. I mean, overcorrection, that makes perfect sense.
Property is just, you just have to see it. I can't imagine buying a house without feeling it, touching it, walking it.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't either. That's nuts. Like, I think that there will always be a place for that. Like everyone, it's a very common story, and we use it as well. The narrative, like they never even saw the house, they just looked at it online, and that's like a special case most of the time.
Yes,
to be
I
honest,
agree.
regardless of what
totally
marketing
agree.
people say. I'm in marketing. I know the deal.
Now,
it's.
I think that virtual tours are important. I think that real estate agents don't make a ton of money I think the average real estate agent in the US makes like $30,000 a year. So, price, the cost to them for a virtual tour is important. So I think these new companies that are coming out with tours that real estate agents can do by themselves easily, like Rico Tours, for example, you can do it in minutes, cheaper, right? You're not breaking the bank. You don't have to pay hosting fees like at Matterport. So I think those will start to become more popular for real estate. Now,
I agree. I think that,
there's a whole other world, like we talked about retail space, commercial buildings, churches, public spaces. I think that's just going to just take off, right? When I was working at Matterport, I saw some amazing places. I saw hotels made out of ice. I saw the most incredible villas in Mexico and, the Mediterranean. And it was just spectacular. So I think there'll still be a need for that. I see more virtual tours coming out for like vacation rentals.
Yep. Oh yeah. The vacation rentals is a huge one. Yeah. Hospitality, retail, and vacation rentals.
It's not really there. So there's this potential to break into that. So yeah, I see it. I see people capturing the world in 3D becoming way more popular and just moving at a rapid pace. Yeah.
Cool. That's it. That's all my predictions.
Yay! Okay, so we'll come back next year and we'll find out if we're right or not. Yeah.
I've got them all written down, so we're good.
It's been an exciting year. I thank everybody who's stayed with me and who's been watching my podcast. I hope they've been educational and helpful. And I appreciate everybody that's joined me, including you, Chris, because you've come on quite a few times and you're very well liked and loved. So
Thank you.
This is my last podcast for the year. So I will see everybody again next year. I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving, a wonderful holiday season. I hope everybody is safe. And thank you so much. Thanks, Chris, for joining.
Thank
All right,
you.
everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.